This video is sponsored by MPB. I'm in Frankfurt for the next few days on a press trip, which I can talk about not now. And I am taking with me the Ricoh GRiiiX. I tried this camera a couple of years ago, and it's one of the most iconic everyday carry cameras out there. It's absolutely tiny, and it's an aps-c sized sensor as well. So to get that in your pocket is crazy. I wanted to take it out as an everyday carry camera and just document all the informal moments of this trip and take you along with me and share my thoughts and feelings around this camera. Because it is iconic for a reason. There's very few cameras out there that offers what this does. The GRiiiX is a 14mm equivalent f2.8 lens, which is right up my street because the 20mm in micro four thirds is what I shoot with all the time. I had a couple of complaints last time, a couple of niggles when I was working with it, and I'm interested to see if that still stands, if I've evolved as a photographer, or if it still annoys me in certain ways. I'll give you the pros and the cons and everything in between. So here are some size comparisons. It goes without saying the reason that this camera is so blooming popular is just how incredibly small it is. But the thing to bear in mind is well, there's two things. One is how blooming flat it is. You can get the smallest camera in the world, but if the lens protrudes, then it's not really pocketable, is it? You would look a little bit sus. And two, it's very, very small, but also has a really comfortable grip. There's a lot of soap bar style cameras that just don't have the grip. Like I'm shooting on the S9 right now and I have a grip attached to it because it's just quite a slippery camera without one. So having a camera that's so small and properly pocketable is really appealing to me. So of course there are some cutbacks to get the form factor so small. It's very much no frills in a lot of ways. And I'm not going to say that it's a negative necessarily, it's just the payoff of having something so small. So you have no viewfinder to speak of, the screen doesn't articulate, and also there's only one front dial to change your settings and there isn't a back dial. However, because this is a point and shoot style camera, I'm finding that I'm just shooting in shutter speed priority most of the time. So I only really need one dial and then I can leave my ISO and my aperture to automatic settings. And just to give you my 2 cents on this, because I know a lot of people will be put off without an EVF, and that's a perfectly valid choice. One thing to bear in mind is it is a fixed lens camera, and the 40mm for the X equivalent, I think the GR3 is just 28, so quite a bit wider. I prefer this one. 40mm is quite like how you see the world. And if you start shooting in a prime lens over and over and over again without changing it, you sort of start to tune your photographer's eye and your mind into composing and pre-composing before you've even brought the camera up. Let me see if I can do this right. Okay, so I know that there's a skyscraper here. Like without looking at the screen, I reckon I can get that literally perfect. I'm actually so proud of that because I've just shot 40mm for so blooming long. I just know how it works. So yes, there's no articulated screen. Yes, there's no EVF. On a blindingly bright day, you may struggle, but once you start using it over and over again, you can sort of pre-compose and it doesn't matter too much. That being said, if you want to get low angles or high angles, as shooting sort of street photography style from the hip, of course, having an articulating screen is what you need. So you can live without it, but I think the payoffs for it being so small is well worth it. One thing I love, love, love in a camera, particularly an everyday carry camera, is customizable JPEGs. And Ricoh have got some really nice stuff built into their cameras. And you can, of course, shoot RAW plus JPEG, so you've got a RAW backup. There are 3 user presets on the main dial and a lovely satisfying safety button so that you don't accidentally sort of spin the dial when it's in your pocket. I really like that actually, and you can use it all one-handed. And on the user presets I have a color preset, and then on the second user preset I have a custom high contrast monochrome, which I really like, and then on the third preset I have the ND filter on and the shutter speed really low, so that if I want to get some daytime long exposures I can do it really quickly without dialing in all the settings. And you know how I can do that? Because it has built-in ND filters and it has incredibly good IBIS. Sometimes aps-c cameras, in my experience, have not had the best IBIS compared to Micro Four Thirds. I think it's just sort of science, because if the sensor itself is smaller, then it's easier to stabilize. But the stabilization in this Ricoh is blooming brilliant. So daytime long exposures with the ND filters, or nighttime long exposures without the ND filters, dead easy. And I've got that on a preset. Now there is a new version of this camera out. It's quite a moderate update from what I can see. But if it's the right time for you to change your camera gear, then you should definitely check out the sponsor of this video, which is MPB. You can buy through them and get your used camera equipment that's professionally checked with a warranty. But also, if you're ready to change things up, you can sell and also trade in as well. And it's super, super easy. You don't even have to speak to a human, which I blooming love. You just go to the website, find the make and model of what you want to sell, tell them the condition, and send it to them. Then the MPB experts will check it over, and I've had people in my Facebook group and DMs on Instagram telling me that at this point MPB have sometimes given them more money because they think that it's a higher condition than people have listed. And I'm just like, I love that customer service. I'm here for that. And then it's as simple as that. You either get your money in the bank or you can trade for whatever equipment takes your fancy. Perhaps this Ricoh. I have links to the UK, EU and US in the description, and it really does help the channel if you do use those links and it shows MPB that I'm doing a good job. So I appreciate you and I appreciate them, and let's get back to the nerdiness. So some things I love and some things I really don't love. Let's start with some good stuff. First of all, I love how quickly this camera powers on. The battery life is not too great, so having the ability to turn it off and on really quickly without missing the moment is super duper handy. There are some cameras I've used, sorry to batter the S9 again, but I'm looking at it. The S9, as an example, is quite slow to turn on, and I'm only talking a couple of seconds. It's not the end of the world. But if you are in an unpredictable environment like travel photography, lifestyle, you want to get something quickly, those couple of seconds can really make or break the shot. So with the Ricoh, you can get it one-handed out, one-handed operation, instant on, instant off, really, really snappy. Something I dislike, particularly because the weather forecast over the next few days is a little bit iffy, is I really wish that this was weather sealed. And I'm not even talking about just rain and drizzle, to be honest. I don't mind taking a chance on that every so often. But because it is a fixed lens and because the front element opens and closes, sometimes it will suck in dust. Now you can get this professionally cleaned and it will take a while for that to happen, and it may not happen to you at all, but it is always a consideration when you have this style of camera with this style of lens. And then you're thinking, Emily, a wonderful workaround for that would be just lob a UV filter on and then there's no way for the dust to get in. Well, another thing that I dislike is you can't put filters on it without buying an accessory, and that does my head in. I might just be a cheapskate at heart. I rant about the Fuji X100 series for the same reason. I just think that's quite an essential thing for a camera to do, and that sort of thing should come in the box for free. It's like a little metal ring. Why are you charging for it, Ricoh? Come on. If you want to make sure that there's no dust in your lens for the foreseeable, I would recommend getting the accessory and then getting a UV filter or similar. Now here is a feature I love and adore, and this went over my head 2 years ago when I first tried this camera. I complained quite a lot about the autofocus, and it's contrast-based autofocus, so you know, it is what it is. However, one thing I love is the snap focus feature. The snap focus feature gives you a way to tell the camera what to do instantly. It just overrides if it's hunting. So I have it set to my function button at the front. I think there's only one function button. Yeah, so my one function button is used on this feature and it's well worth it. You can set it to infinity. If you say you were taking pictures of this skyscraper out here and the camera was hunting on the window, you could just press the snap focus and it would go straight to infinity and everything would be fine. And then if you are more of a street photographer, you can put it to 5 meters or 3 meters, for example, and you can change that pretty quickly in camera as well. It really does change the way that you think about autofocus. For me, I'm like, I'll give the camera a chance, and then if it doesn't do it straight away, I know I've got a backup to solve the problem straight away. And I actually wish more cameras would have this feature because I found it really helpful. And last time I had the Ricoh, I really didn't use that feature and I should have done. So I was definitely a little bit misinformed the first time I tried this camera. So I'm really glad that I got to try it again. Now you do have a hot shoe and you have a leaf shutter in the lens, so you can get really high sync speeds with flash guns if you want to. But one thing I actually quite would have liked to have seen is a built-in flash. There's probably not a lot of room for it, but because I see this as very much a lifestyle camera, maybe you're taking pictures of family events or nighttime shots when you're out with friends, having an onboard flash might have been quite cool. Of course, you can add little add-on ones, it's no problem. I've got like little Ricoh ones where you can just sort of slot it on and it doesn't add too much to the camera. But as I said at the beginning of this video, there are compromises to get it so small, and I guess that's one of them. One thing that I did complain about in my original review ages ago was there is a back dial which is default set to EV, so you can up and down your exposure compensation. Up and down, that's the professional term. And I found taking it in and out of my bag that I would sometimes rest my thumb on it and sometimes accidentally over or underexpose my photos. And because the screen might be not the most visible on a bright day, or you might not be paying too much attention to the histogram, it was very easy to accidentally get your exposure wrong by hitting that dial. Now this time, I've not done it quite as much, but it is something to bear in mind. You can change what that does in settings, and I'm gonna have a tinker through and see what works better for me. Now, if this camera were my own and not kindly loaned from MPB, thank you, I would definitely invest in a battery or three. The batteries are very small, the sensor is very big, and that's usually a very bad combination. It is USB-C powered, so I tend to have a battery pack in my bag most days anyway. So on this trip, in between shots, like if I'm just stopping for lunch or whatever, I'll just stick it on the USB power bank. It's not the end of the world. And you can sort of manage the battery by, you could even turn the screen off if you wanted that sort of experience, if you knew the 40mm focal length so well, or you could just, ride the power button as I've been doing. One thing that did catch me by surprise is because I'm in micro four thirds and tiny sensor life, I was expecting the low light performance to be significantly better than what I'm used to, and it's honestly not. I've used the X100 Fujifilm cameras and their low light stuff is really, really good. So I don't know if it's not a sensor thing, because this is aps-c as well. It just must be how Ricoh decide to process the data. Around 3200 ISO, things get a little bit prickly. You can combat this with noise reduction in editing or shooting in the lovely high grain monochrome, which I adore. It's not too unpleasing, it's certainly manageable. But yeah, given that it is a larger sensor, I was expecting the low light performance to be a bit better. Video features, there's not much to write home about. It's a shame, really, because the camera has built-in ND filters and IBIS, so it could be a match made in heaven. You would need that accessory to get an ND filter on it. Yes, I'm still salty about that. So yeah, it's definitely photocentric. And quite right, this is really designed to be an everyday, capture your life sort of camera, and it doesn't have very many bells and whistles. Perhaps heat dissipation might actually be a problem with the video because it is so blooming small. I don't know. I don't make cameras, I just rant about them. Not a pro, not a con, just know that you're getting into it. You're paying a lot of money for something that's very photocentric. And speaking about a lot of money, that's also a negative. There is a newer version, the GR4, but usually when a new camera comes out, the old one gets a bit more affordable. And that has just not blooming happened here. These still go for a pretty penny on the used market. I think the reason for that is there's just no alternatives, really. Like your X100 series is aps-c, but it's a lot bigger. So they've kind of cornered the market, and because of that, the price doesn't budge too much. There are older versions, which you might want to consider if you're on a little bit more of a budget, but otherwise, I like to see it sunny side up and think if you want to try this camera and you don't know if it's for you, if you ended up selling it in 6 months' time, you'd probably not lose any money. So having a camera that retains its value can also be a pro as well as a con. So let me know what you think about the little Ricoh. Are you a fan, or is there too many compromises for you? And check out some more of my tiny camera series while you're at it.